over my, years of service as a trial lawyer, I've been able to give a good number of talks to friends like this. And I got pretty comfortable with them. I can do cross-examination, wind me up and let me go. I can do that. I've done some discovery stuff, done some deposition talks, but never well-being. This topic makes me a little bit nervous, to be honest. I think Kay's decision, though, to ask me to address this important topic tells us less about my qualifications to speak on it and more about the desperation he must have felt to find a trial lawyer who would talk about it, and like as not, the many that rejected him before he asked me. But I am, at the bottom of my heart, a trial lawyer willing to address any audience on any subject at any time. So, here I am. Ego leads you to funny places sometimes. Fortunately, I think there is an analogy between the talks and the well-being space and those in our law space, because in both there is no shortage of self-proclaimed gurus or masterminds who want you to believe that they have the key. Want you to buy their book or come to their summit where they will bestow upon you the key, the single key, that one revelation that will unlock the door to a happy life or a lucrative law practice. It is my opinion that most folks who offer a single key to unlock either of those doors are usually only full of themselves and sometimes full of one other thing. It's my opinion that success in either takes the old school virtues like discipline, lots of right decisions, lots of work, and lots of time. And that's where the goofy title to this talk comes from. Wellbeing is like that pot of stew in Thailand. Y'all heard about this? It's like for 50 years, almost 50 years, this family has been working on this pot of stew. It's been simmering for all that amount of time. They call it perpetual stew. And apparently this isn't the only family that does it. But one family has this stew, and they've been selling the same pot for a couple generations now. They sell some and add a few new ingredients, but it's always a work in progress. I think well-being, as best I can tell, I am no guru or mastermind about this topic, is like that. It's lots of different ingredients, lots of discipline, and lots of time. I think it is easier to talk about what some of the ingredients to well-being are not than to talk about what they are. And since I get to choose the easier path if I want, I'm going to start there. People are in general very bad at knowing what will make them happy. I get that from this book I'll talk about later called The Happiness Hypothesis by Jonathan Haidt. But if you were to observe what people do instead of listening to what they say, and then think about what most people must believe will bring them happiness, you would conclude that most people think the key to happiness is in accumulation of material things. Because so many of us, myself at many points included, spend so much time and effort pursuing wealth and money. And to be fair, money helps, right? Before you can start to talk about well-being or happiness, you need food, shelter, and clothing. In today's America, that is going to require money. And even, beyond that, there are, it's hard to achieve well-being without some basic comforts. In this city, a safe car to drive around in, air conditioning in the Atlanta summer. But there's a point not far beyond that where the marginal utility of additional dollars and additional stuff drops off rapidly, where even huge acquisitions don't, in the estimation of social scientists, add much to people's happiness and well-being. I have children now, 9 and 7, and so now I think a lot about that. I think like most parents, they've become or the center of my life. And so, but I think children have a lot to teach us about this. I have a story that I think probably most parents can identify with. It's happened a few times, but like there will be some grand vacation that my wife and I have planned. Like it's been on our list for a long time. We'll save up so that we can afford to make the trip. We plan it very carefully. Before we get ready to go, I'm like trying to get everything done in my law office, trying to brief people on what's going to happen while I'm gone. I'm putting up my out of office message on Outlook. And finally we go, you shove the kids in the car, get them to the airport, try to keep them quiet on the airplane. You get there, go through all the activities, you're delivering on what you said you were going to do, nailing that itinerary. You get on the plane, you come back, and on the ride back from Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, you say, all right, kids, what was your favorite part? And they're like, the ice cream. And you're like, what are you talking about, the ice cream? They're like, at the airport, the ice cream. And that's tough to hear, but I think they're right. We do better if we can derive joy from the everyday things, from the quotidian parts of our lives, instead of depending on some like grand expedition to deliver that. If you want well-being, it has to come from the everyday, not the once-a-year type experiences. And there's a children's book I like that I think illustrates this. Somebody gave my wife and I a copy of this, and if it was somebody in this room, thank you. I don't remember who it was, but it's Through Your Eyes by Ainsley Earhart, and it's a children's book from the perspective of a mother of a young child, I think probably toddler age. But anyway, she's had the child, and she opens the book like this. The moment we met, I wrote down a list of all we would do, what not to miss. We'd soar through the skies on a super fast plane, speed past snowy hills on a passenger train. And I'm not going to read the whole book, but there comes a scene later where she's taken her daughter to a park. Not like any grand park, but this is supposed to be like the municipal park across the street in the town where they live. And the book continues. The moment we met, I drew up a plan to show you the world, to touch all you can. Then you chased the wind, whispered songs to the squirrels, sitting still in the sun, head bowed, all curls. Staring into the lake, you giggled with glee. Who would have thought you could teach me to be? And in my opinion, the children have this right. As far as I can tell, the secret to well-being is wanting what you have, not having what you want. And it applies to adults too. This is that book I was talking about. I loved it. And it's not just me. Matt Stoddard liked it so much he read it twice. But in it, Jonathan Haidt, among other things, talks about what he calls the adaptation principle. And this is important because it proves the point that it isn't the ongoing acquisition of material things or even upgrades in lifestyle that fuel well-being. And the general point of the adaptation principle is that humans adapt remarkably well to changes in condition, up or down, right? Something great happens to you. Your lifestyle goes up. You move into a big new house, for example. You might be thrilled about that for a while, for maybe a few months. And then it's just your house. And you kind of return to your baseline level of well-being. And the same happens on the downside. I think we probably are better at understanding that than a lot of folks because we work with so many injured people who have suffered sometimes life-altering injuries. But people react with remarkable resiliency to that. If you were to tell me tomorrow, like, Jeb, you're going to wake up and you ain't going to be able to move from your neck down, I think I'd be like, just go ahead and kill me. Like, I would rather die than be a quadriplegic. But that's not the choice that most quadriplegics make. I've had the privilege of representing some, and they want to live. They're not ready to go. Studies show that too. Even people who suffer terrible injuries return after some time to something pretty close to their pre-injury baseline level of happiness. There's a quotation from Stephen Hawking, the famous disabled physicist. He says, quote, "My expectations were reduced to zero when I was 21. Everything since has been a bonus." I imagine that we can identify with this. If you imagine if you bought a new car, maybe your first nice car you ever bought, it was probably a thrill to drive it for a few months, and then you don't have any different feeling when you get in it than you did when you got in your old beater car from college or whatever. I remember specifically some clients that my partner Matt Kahn and I represented, the Threewitt family. Their 20-something son had been on a date with a motorcycle, car crash, horrible brain injury, couldn't talk after that, couldn't walk, no brushing his teeth, no ADLs. And it massively affected his parents' lives. They were like looking into retirement, had some hopes for retirement, and all that got smashed because their lives became centered around taking care of their son and worrying what would happen to him when they died. But they didn't sink into despondency. It was a rough, several months, years, but eventually, when we met with them, they didn't seem like despondent people. They seemed happy, strong, and resilient, and I hope we've all had some experience like that in our law practice. So those are the more educated arguments for why more stuff doesn't make more happy. I also have my own arguments, which I'm now happy to share. At my house, we drink Maxwell House coffee. Now, I can't claim to be all the things I'm up here talking about. I've engaged in lifestyle creep, and I'm not trying to be on my high horse. But this is one thing I think we got right. Maxwell House coffee is great for a few reasons. Number one, I could switch to something more expensive, some fancy Pete's coffee or whatever. And for a while, for the first few weeks drinking it in the morning, I'd be like, damn, this is good. But after a while, it would just be the new normal. And then I would be stuck paying more for coffee from which I derive the same pleasure, the same utility. Also, if I go out someplace, I go to Waffle House, a place I like a lot, and I drink their coffee, it tastes perfectly fine. If I was accustomed to fancy stuff at home, I probably would have a different feeling about that. And if I am some nice place like here where they're serving uprooted coffee, I'm like, wow, this is really good. I get kind of thrilled out of it. So I think that applies to a lot of lifestyle creep. You're best if you can keep stuff down. You really don't need the fancy stuff. In the end, it's a recipe, I think, for dissatisfaction. If I drank fancy stuff, I wouldn't enjoy Waffle House as much. The craziest thing to me is the haughty connoisseurs, where someone has become very picky about a specific subject, and then they're not only are they picky about it, unreasonably picky about it, but they're proud of their pickiness. And I don't get that. Why are you proud that you look down upon this hotel or this whatever? You hadn't achieved anything. Doesn't make any sense to me. As we talk more about chasing stuff, somebody has always got a bigger boat. It does not matter how much money you make. It does not matter how dazzlingly you spend it. There's always somebody out there who's got more. So if we fall into that trap to which all people, myself included, are prey, are subject, that is comparing what you have, comparing your lifestyle to someone else's. You're writing yourself a prescription for dissatisfaction because you can never win that. It's not possible. If you stop and think about it, there will always be somebody who's got a bigger boat than you do. So if you allow it to trouble you that someone else has more than you, I think you will always be troubled. If you derive your principal gratification from having more than your friends, eventually you may not have that many friends anymore. I think if we think about people we know who are like this, who are very sort of status competitive, none of them, or the ones I know, are not, in my estimation, happy people. I don't mean to get on my high horse about this. People are social animals, lawyers, myself included, are competitive, so some of it's natural, but I talk about it in the hopes that we can start to recognize it in ourselves. And when I see myself thinking like this, tell myself internally, shut the hell up, Butler, move on. And I hope that helps. I think over time, a little mental discipline helps with stuff like this. I warned Kate I would talk about ground zero for the social status competitive race. I have seen some stuff where it's just like the blatant express flaunting of material wealth. And this is something, it's an older post from a lawyer. And to begin, like, the question is like, why? Why does an author post something like this? For one, it is not a good look for any of us. Imagine like Hamilton is down at the Capitol fighting against tort reform, trying to convince legislators that plaintiffs' lawyers are real people too, and not just a bunch of greedy assholes. And the legislature takes a break, looks at Instagram, and this is what he sees from a plaintiff's lawyer. Like, that's not very helpful. Second, like, what is the goal with crap like this? Like, I understand the need to market a practice. I've been running my own shop since 2014. I understand that, you need business, you need to market, but no one's going to hire some lawyer because they took a jet to Coachella or any other thing you could sub in where people are just bragging about wealth. So what's the point? I mean, I think if we think about that objectively, the author's point probably here is he wants to enhance his image in the eyes of others by making them think he is very wealthy. But what, again, is the point of that? Like, if you make people envious, so what? What does that accomplish? And the next piece is that to the extent we spend our time cultivating some image that deviates from the reality of ourselves, we again write a prescription for discontent, because to the extent you create some image that ain't really you got to feel like you got to maintain that. And you have that increasing cognitive dissonance between who you are and who you're pretending to be. So again, I've been guilty of showing off as much as anybody, been known to promote my verdicts and things like that in the name of marketing. So I don't claim to be a Puritan about this, but I do think, when we confront the temptation to boast in these ways, a little bit of thought about what we're doing could go a long way. All right, so I've stood up here and complained a while about what does not go in the perpetual stew pot. Here's stuff that does. If you read about these topics, a lot of times when you look at things that correlate with happiness, with the happiness hypothesis, there's also a great book called Blue Zones that touches some of these things. A lot of the ingredients in that pot of perpetual stew are really unsurprising, which I think is kind of wonderful, because it teaches you that what you're reading probably is right, and you probably know what you need to get where you want to be if your goal is well-being. It just, as always, takes work, and key among it, the first thing is usually relationships. Study after study shows that people with strong relationships lead happier and longer lives. So we should spend time and energy here. It is very easy, especially in a competitive and, in my judgment, rewarding profession like ours, to spend all your time at the office. I have been certainly guilty of that. For many years, I worked 6 days a week, 10 hours a week, and 8 on Sundays. So I missed a lot of what should have been relationship building time. I missed a lot of my kids' childhood, and it was hard on my wife, my wonderful wife. But, all I can say for myself, I suppose, is that I'm trying to get better. And as we work on these things and work on relationships, one idea I had from some source I can no longer recall is to ask your family how you're doing. Like, sit your children down and I'll be like, Jim, how am I doing as a dad? And they'll tell you. And it's not that bad. I had to spend a couple days getting ready for this. I was like, damn, we're going to be cross-examined or something. It wasn't that bad. There were simple, concrete things. I was halfway assistant coaching Jim's baseball team at the time. And before each inning, when Jim's team, he's now 7, he was 6 at this time, took the field, the coach would read out the positions for that half inning. It'd be Trevor's at shortstop, Jim's at second base, Frank's in right field or whatever. And then I would grab Jim and be like, go to second base. And he just didn't like that extra being told. That was a big deal for him. So I could quit that very easily. It was low-hanging fruit, paternal improvement. So I found it productive to ask your kids how you're doing. If you're brave, you can also ask your spouse. can lead to more lengthy conversations. So I am trying to improve in terms of like what really matters in life. When I'm on my deathbed and looking back at the highlights, I do not think that I'm going to be like, man, it was those brilliant responses to defendant's second interrogatories. It's probably not going to happen. So it's going to be stuff like this. I now, because this is my talk and Kate didn't police it well enough, I get to do kind of what I want. So here's some pictures of my family. My daughter, Farah, had some kids over roasting marshmallows in my backyard. Jim joined. This is me and Jim fishing in Chattahoochee right under 285. We ended up catching a bunch of trout. I lost myself. Here we go. Splitting wood in my buddy's backyard, my daughter and me. Ashby. So when I was getting ready, Drew was like, I can't remember how this started. He's probably said in very polite terms, Butler, why are you talking about well-being or something like that? We started talking about it. And what did you tell me about Halloween, Drew? Which means, if I remember his explanation right, when your kids are young enough to dress up for Halloween, you want to try to join for that. And so I've tried to do that. Obviously, I didn't try real hard. I'm the only one not wearing a costume. Just looked like a damn middle-aged dad, whatever. Anyway, there's my mom's birthday. On the right here, my lovely wife and our dog, and this is my dad and a high percentage of his grandchildren. When it comes time to spending time with kids, maybe this was intuitive to some people. I had to learn it, intellectually and then practice, but you got to do what they want to do. My son is really into building squirrel traps with Amazon boxes now. So that's what we do. My daughter loves to draw. I'm trying to draw like dogs with sidewalk chalk on my. She's like, Dad, why can't you draw? Shut up. Work on your own. Anyway, coaching their sports is great. It takes a ton of time. If you can find the time, it's great. In the world of well-being, it isn't just this, right? Working well at work worth doing is a huge part, in my opinion, and in the opinion of people who actually know what they're talking about, of well-being. So practicing law and working hard absolutely has a place in this conversation. The social scientists came up with this word that I think has kind of gotten maybe diluted in social media and other places, but they talked about flow at work. And flow in a working environment is working at something that is challenging, that you believe to be worth doing, and to which your skills are well matched. It's when you're cruising along and time is just flying by. And obviously not every day do we achieve the state in the practice of law. Not one time in dealing with human resources have I achieved a state of flow. But it's there, in little parts. For me, I'm kind of nerdy. I can get to it right and brief, so that's not everybody. But one of the things I think I will remember for a long time is this one moment in the trial that's shown here. I tried this case with my buddy Naveen Ramachandrappa. Some of y'all know is one of the finest appellate lawyers in Georgia. But there was this moment where Judge Lewis in Henry County was about to come back from a break, and I knew kind of what was going to happen. And they had Brittany Partridge was a lawyer with our firm at the time. She was working on one thing that was going to go, and I'd put Rama on something else. This maybe the charge conference or something that was coming up, and I was getting ready for this exam, and I knew what they were going to do and how I was going to block it, and I knew the new thing I was going to ram right where the sun don't shine. And it was just this beautiful moment, and it was like a symphony, and it was perfect. And I thought, damn, this is what I was born to do. And that, is a state of flow, and there's an immense value in that. So when we talk about well-being, it isn't all just leave the office. It's also have a good time while you're there. Roosevelt said, Theodore Roosevelt has a quotation I like. Far and away, the best prize that life has to offer is the chance to work hard at work worth doing. I'll go back to Jonathan Haidt for a minute. He wrote about the psychological need of people to have an ability to affect the world around them, right? To do something, to do it well, and to make change in something they care about. And Haidt used the term effectance for that, is in the ability to affect things is effectance. And then I want to read this extended quotation from him about sort of the work environment. More research finds that most people approach their work in one of three ways: as a job, a career, or a calling. If you see your work as a job, you do it only for the money, you look at the clock frequently while dreaming about the weekend ahead, and you probably pursue hobbies which satisfy your affectance needs more thoroughly than does your work. If you see your work as a career, you have larger goals of advancement, promotion, and prestige. The pursuit of these goals often energizes you, and you sometimes take work home with you because you want to get the job done properly. Yet at times you wonder why you work so hard. You might occasionally see your work as a rat race where people are competing for the sake of competing. If you see your work as a calling, however, you find your work intrinsically fulfilling. You are not doing it to achieve something else. You see your work as contributing to the greater good or as playing a role in some larger enterprise, the worth of which seems obvious to you. You have frequent experiences of flow during the workday, and you neither look forward to quitting time nor feel the desire to shout, "Thank God it's Friday." You would continue to work, perhaps even without pay, if you suddenly became very wealthy. I imagine that most of us can put ourselves somewhere on the continuum. There are those for whom law is like pure calling. Naveen is one of those people. I think Brother Bill Stone is in some ways one of those people. For most, I think we fit somewhere along the spectrum and can enjoy the elements that we enjoy, and sometimes we've got to do things we don't want. But work can be wonderful, a big part of well-being, sometimes in ways you wouldn't expect. I married a Catholic, and so before we got married, I had to go to Catholic marriage counseling. Anyone who's done this, it's called pre-Cana. And I was not particularly excited about going to pre-marriage counseling. But I was going to do it and not complain and be a good sport about it. So we show up at this cathedral joint and go into this office, and there's this old deacon. I don't know if they call him deacons in the Catholic. I forget what they call him. Anyway, he's like an elder of the church, and he starts in on the counseling. And I'm doing my thing, nodding along, and we pause, and I'm like, "How come you're doing this?" He's like, "Doing what?" I'm like, "How come you're doing this pre-Cana marriage counseling with people like me?" And he said, "Oh, well, I retired, and I spent a few months at home, and my wife said, 'I married you for better or for worse, but not for lunch. You need to find something to do.' Here I am." In the world of jobs that can produce well-being, in my opinion, plaintiffs' lawyers are in pretty good shape. Now, our job, the downside is our jobs involve daily conflict, and if that bothers people, it's tough. But they are good, our jobs are good in that we meet Jonathan Haidt's three big criteria. It is work that requires skill. It is often work where you have lots of autonomy. You can choose your own path and your own methods, and it's work that makes a difference. And those are three key ingredients to a job that is good for well-being. There are lots of folks who talk about the need to separate your personal and professional life. I find that to be a bunch of BS, and I don't agree with that at all. I've, since the very beginning of my career, merged everything together, and that's worked better for me. Different people may want to do it differently, but I'm just one person. I don't become a different person when I enter and leave the office door. I care about what I'm doing at home and at work. I think about my cases in the shower while I'm supposed to be sleeping. My kids will ask for stories about my cases. They will ask until I get tired of telling them about courtroom stories. Many of my friends are lawyers. The same people I used to play beer pong with were now sending cases back and forth. My social network of professional and personal is so intertwined you couldn't pull apart if I wanted to. Some of y'all know I grew up with this. My father used to tell courtroom stories when I was a kid. He's a lawyer, has been for 40 years or so. And he was always the hero, though, in his stories. Every time my dad told me a story, he was just kicking some other lawyer's tail, beating up the defense. And as I got a little older, I thought, well, maybe he's exaggerating a little bit. He's always the hero. And I got older still and started practicing law, and I realized, no, he really was kicking people's asses all the time. It just took me a while to figure that out. You do need some separation, of course. You don't want to be sitting at family dinner and answering law emails on your phone the entire time. But in my judgment, much easier just to be yourself all the time, home, office, and you think about both. If I have a good idea while I'm home, I'll take a note so I can use it the next day. If something personal, important comes up while I'm at the office, I'm going to address it then. That's worked for me. I'm doing all right on time. A couple words on why you get out of the bed in the morning. There's an old saying I like: if a question is ancient, that's a pretty good clue that it is also intractable. So what is the meaning of our lives is certainly that ancient and intractable question. But I think, and some people who have studied these issues also seem to believe, that you've got to make it up. Like, you weren't born with a purpose. Like, none of us were. You got to find it. You got to make it. For me, I think there is like an emotional purpose of your life and then an intellectual one. And the emotional, for most of the children, like, that's where it centers pretty quickly. Intellectually can be somewhat different. For a lot of us, for a lot of lawyers, it is law. Like, our cases can make a difference, particularly in product liability. But I think in data security and in helping people who've been hurt in car wrecks or anything else, that's a good intellectual purpose. This has been a big one for me. Jay Sad and Naveen and I started this thing called Smart Giving a couple years ago. This is our website, smartgiving.io. The idea of which is if you're going to give philanthropically, not everybody does, but if you're going to, take a few minutes and think about it. And a few minutes of thought can make just a world of difference in the degree to which your donation helps people who actually need it. So this is like a big deal for me. I think in this, we make a huge difference in the lives of people who might otherwise die. And that's not an exaggeration, because you're talking about addressing things like malaria and vitamin deficiency in the developing world. So we've gotten a bunch of y'all involved in this. My partner, Matt Kahn, does it. Naveen does it. Ashby, Thielen, Natalie Woodward, Matt Stoddard, Jay Sad, and Mike Kaplan have all joined us. Anyway, this is a big part of my intellectual purpose, apart from helping my clients and beating up people I don't like in court. I was late in life coming to the conclusion that physical health matters a lot for your mental happiness. I don't know why it took me so long to figure that out. It should be pretty obvious. Your brain is, after all, an organ in your body. If your body doesn't work real well, neither does your brain. This book was amazing. It made the rounds, I feel like, among my social set a few years ago, and it is just wonderful. I've read it twice. It is about longevity. That is not just living a long time, but living a long time and enjoying it, right? You're not like decrepit laying in bed for the last 10 years. It is extending the part of your life where you're able to do the things you love, whether that's like go hiking, play golf, chase your grandchildren around, whatever that is. But 3 reasons that I think now physical health is a big component of like mental well-being. One of those is the first one. Your brain works better if your body works better. You have more energy and better ideas, better function. The second is pain avoidance. We all probably have seen through our clients that constant pain affects every part of your life. You're more irritable. People don't want to be around you. You don't enjoy things as much. And of course, there's some things that sources of pain that cannot be prevented by good health practices, like a car wreck is a great example. But some can. I tell a personal story. I had, like a year ago, started having some pain in my lower back. I have weird posture, like I kind of puff out my chest or something. I don't know what. But anyway, I have more curve in my low spine than a lot of people, and it was starting to hurt. So I saw some people about it, and it really wasn't that hard to fix. All I had to do a more serious stretching regimen, including that classic stretching for middle-aged men, the hip flexor, and then start doing some lifts that work on my lower abs. And that went away. I haven't felt that pain in like 6 months. So pain prevention is a part of it. You can prevent some chronic conditions, especially with good metabolic health. And then the third reason that physical health helps with mental well-being, this kind of surprised me, although perhaps it shouldn't have. Body image matters like quite a bit. I think in an ideal world, our mental well-being wouldn't depend on how we think other people see us, but As a point of fact, it does, or at least that is what the statistics show. That if we are happier about the way we look, we can be happier in general. That's particularly true if there's like some feature that a person is particularly insecure about. And studies have shown that if someone is secure about some particular thing and they get plastic surgery on that, it can actually create durable and a long-lasting increase in happiness, which is the part I was surprised to read. I will wrap up. I've about exhausted all that I know and have learned on well-being. But the sum for me is that if you want well-being, it's like anything else, you got to work. There's no key. It's a bunch of ingredients over a long period of time. And they change from person to person and from year to year. You know, the activities you would expect of a psychologically well-balanced 25-year-old are not what you would expect to see of a 75-year-old. I'm in the middle. I'm now 43. I've gone from beer pong to bird watching, and I'm perfectly happy with that transition. They change from person to person. For those for whom their career is a true calling, I think of my buddy Naveen, they don't need as much social stuff to achieve well-being, but others are balanced differently. Of course, that's fine. The last slide is this one. I'm trying to get to the last slide. It's never too late. This is what psychologists call the U curve. People report greatest happiness in youth and then increasing in old age. So if you are middle-aged and miserable, it's not too late. People get happier with age. I think as we become more comfortable with ourselves and we begin to learn that it's not about having what you want, it's about wanting what you have. Thank you.